Infecting atmosphere. 360 degrees we gone clear. Then we start celebrations, yeah. Blazing hotter than ever, sipping on fire water. We girl them bumpers making smoke. The whole vectors burst fire, jamming up to the fire. We live by the party as code. Then we find and raise the temperature, then we vex and raise the temperature. Raise the temperature, we go party like we on fire. Raise the temperature, then we jump and raise the temperature. Raise the temperature, we go party like we on fire. Blaze, we blazing, blaze, we blazing, blaze, we blazing, party like we on fire. Blaze, we blazing, blaze, we blazing, blaze, we blazing.
Good evening, everybody just joining in. Remember, we're grabbing our daily heartbeat and getting the live to 5K likes. Once we hit 5K likes, I'm going to bring our guest on up. Hey, Aaron, how are you? How's everything going, Aaron?
Blazing hotter than ever, sipping on fire water. We girl them bumpers making smoke. The whole vectors burst fire, jamming up to
Top Notch Iowa, good evening. How are you doing? As we're coming in, everyone, we are grabbing our daily heartbeat and getting the live to 5K likes. Once we hit 5K likes, we're going to go ahead and bring our guest on up. Let me go ahead and send it out to the guest. How is the audio? Thumbs up in the chat if the audio is good. Thumbs up in the chat if the audio is good.
Just give me where you never give nobody, don't be shy. I know all of them who watching, they go talk. But when they talk, we go tell them, I don't know about you. But when I don't mean the man, me and a woman, I'm a champion. She dancing to a pro-soca. I don't know about you. But when I'm on the road and I'm in the boat, you know I'm not sober. She look me like I'm a lover, and me chanting.
Aaron, how are you doing? Are you looking forward to the weekend? How's everything going with you? Thumbs up. Is the audio good, Aaron? Can you hear me? Is the audio good? As we are getting on in, I joined a little bit early. I just wanted to get the chat going. As we're coming in, we're grabbing our daily heartbeat and getting the live to 5K likes. Once we hit 5K likes, I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest on up. I see you. I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest on up once we hit 5K likes. Enjoy the tunes. Today I switched it up. I'm on soca vibes today. We're grabbing our daily heartbeat, tapping the live, getting it to 5K likes. Once we hit 5K likes, I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest on up. How is the audio? Can I get a thumbs up in the chat if the audio is good? Or if anything, I need to adjust. Thank you for those of you who are here joining in early. Right as we hit the dot 6 p.m. sharp. I'm sure I'm just going to give everybody a chance to come on over. And once we get 5K likes, we're going to go ahead and bring our guest on up.
Celebrate much fun. Friends United in Numbers. Saturday, February the 6th at the Fatima Grounds in Trinidad. Fun awaits. DJ Private Ryan.
From your wake up this morning, you're a winner. Yeah, heard Divine Alchemy. How are you doing? How's everything going? You're a winner. Na 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 na. Everyone, as we're joining in, we're grabbing our daily heartbeat and liking the live. Once we get to 5K likes, I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest on up. Your pen. What's your jaw? Thank you for joining in early, you guys. Welcome to Office Hours with Dr. Johnson. Today I have a great guest. I'm excited for our conversation. This week, the 3 guests, I'm excited for the conversation for all 3 of them. They're all doing great work in the community, and I follow their pages and I enjoy their content. So I wanted to make sure I bring them over to Office Hours and continue sharing their great content and connecting with them as well. So once again, tonight, I'm excited for the conversation tonight. This person has lots of information to share, a smart individual. So we're going to learn a lot tonight, and I'm looking forward to it. So everyone joining in, hey Mia, how are you doing? Everyone joining in. As we are getting in, we're grabbing our daily heart me and liking the live. Once we hit 5K likes, I'm going to go ahead and bring our guests up for today. Mia, thank you for joining in. Welcome to Office Hours with Dr. Johnson. You guys, I switched the music up today. I'm doing soca music. This is the old 2016 soca mix. Good evening, Mia. Thank you for joining. I'm glad you can make it. Today's conversation is going to be great. I think you'll enjoy tonight's guest speaker. Once again, grabbing a daily heart me and liking the live. Once we hit 5K likes, I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest on up. Enjoy the tunes. Eggs. Mia, what you know about Juve, Mia? Are you from the Caribbean, Mia? I used to do a couple carnivals. Are you from the Caribbean, Mia? What you know about Juve? This is okay. If you know Juve, then you know who Private Ryan is. This is Private Ryan. Your parents are. Where your parents from? I'm from Jamaica. Where your parents from? My name down. 2K likes. Once we hit 5K likes, I'm gonna go ahead and bring our guest on up. Okay, Cruising and Dominican Republic or Dominican? Which one? Dominican Republic or Dominican? Because we can't forget those. There's two Dominican. There's Dominican Republic and Dominican. Okay, I knew it was Dominican. Okay, you see, yeah, because people always forget that small island. Big up to Dominica. Okay, that's nice. Once again, grabbing our daily heart me and liking the live to 5K likes. They do. There's lots of small islands that they always forget about. I know it's crazy. Jamaica, Haiti, Trinidad, Bahamas. I would say those are like the top most popular countries. Those are the countries that the cruise ships go to. Those are the countries that most people always hear about. Jamaica, Trinidad, Bahamas, and Haiti. Mandy, thank you for joining in. Thank you for grabbing our daily heart me. Once again, we are grabbing our daily heart me and liking the live. Once we hit 5K likes, I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest on up. I'm looking forward to today's conversation. Mandy, I switched the tunes up today. We are doing a 2016 soca playlist. A 2016 soca music playlist. Y'all know I'm back home in Jamaica, so when I'm in America, I got the slow elevator music in the background going. But once being that I'm back here in Jamaica, I'm like, you know what, I got to switch it up. So I've been doing old school 90s dancehall music, old school reggae music, and I'm bringing back the old school soca mix. So I hope y'all enjoy the tunes. And guess what? This kind of shows part of Dr. Johnson. It kind of shows my culture a little bit and shows the music that I enjoy. Yes, we're running the likes up, her Divine Alchemy. We are definitely running the likes up. We are at 3.2K likes. Once we hit 5K likes, I'm bringing up our guests because we have some great things to share tonight. I do like this music, you know I'm about doing what you feel. Amen. Thank you, Mandy. Yes. This DJ mix is called DJ Private Ryan. He is on YouTube. DJ Private Ryan. Good evening, everyone. Office Hours with Dr. Johnson. Educator Hubs, how are you doing? We are getting the live to 5K likes and grabbing our daily heart me. Once we hit 5K likes, we're going to be bringing our guest on up. Educator Hobbs, how are you? Good. She says she's doing well. Thank you for that. Once we hit 5K likes, we're bringing our guest on up. Tonight's conversation is going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for the gift, Educator Hobbs. I'm looking forward to the gems that our speaker is going to be dropping with us tonight. That's what it's all about here over at Office Hours with Dr. Johnson and Educator Hobbs. I think this is your first time over here. Being that I'm back home in Jamaica right now, my background music, I'm switching it up to soca music, dancehall music, and old school reggae music. When I come back to the US, I'm gonna switch it up again. But right now that I'm back home in Jamaica for the next 3 weeks, I'll be doing mix, old school mix. Hoping you guys enjoy the tunes, having you guys learn a little bit about my culture and a little bit about the music that I enjoy. This is DJ Private Ryan, a 2016 Soca mix. We are at 4.3K. Once we hit 5K likes, we're bringing our guest on up. Before we bring our guest on up, a thumbs up and a praying hands is me acknowledging you guys in the chat. A thumbs up and a praying hands is me acknowledging you guys in the chat. I don't want to interrupt our guests as they're speaking, but I also don't want to feel as though I'm ignoring you guys. So a thumbs up and a praying hands is me acknowledging you, sending your gifts, checking in, or any comments you guys are saying in the chat. Okay, I just don't make sure you guys know I'm not ignoring you. I'm just, respecting our guests and making sure that we can hear them and receive all the gems that they are going to be sharing with us. 4.6K likes. Once we hit 5K likes, we're bringing our guest on up. I need a pen. And y'all see, I got my notes. Hey, hey. 4.8 likes. Almost there. Almost there. Once we hit 5K likes, I'm going to bring our guest on up. And we're going to get into this conversation. Thank you, Mandy. I invited the guest. Let me see. We're just waiting for the guest to come on up. I invited her. Everybody watching we. I don't want problems. Why you don't even? If this thing is love. Educator Hobbs, what you know about soca music? We'll talk soon, Educator Hobbs. Her Divine Alchemy, ma'am. Can you hear me? Can you see me? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Perfect. Okay, I can see you now. Thank you. First and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time to step on over into office hours with Dr. Johnson. I hope you was enjoying the soca tunes, like I said, or I participate in Carnival every year. Okay, Educator Hobbs. Like I said, I'm back home in Jamaica, so I switched up the music and I'm doing old school dancehall. As I'm building community on here, I want to share more about me. So, connect with others and connect with other Caribbean professionals as well, too. So, before we get into it, just to give you a breakdown of Office Hours with Dr. Johnson, while I am building community here on TikTok, I want to make sure that I'm giving back to those who are pouring into me and also those who enjoy my content and want to learn more and, constantly receiving the resources that I am dropping to them. So I figured, hey, let me connect my office hours with other professionals like yourself who are doing great work in the community. So these office hour sessions are not about me, they are about our interviewee for us to get to know you and know the great work that you are doing in your space. So, Her Divine Alchemy, I'm going to pass it over to you and just give us a brief introduction of who you are, including your educational and professional background.
Okay. Well, thank you again for this opportunity to chat. I know we've had discussions outside of the live, so I appreciate it. I'm glad that you were able to see value in the work that I presented. So, for all of you, my online name here is Her Divine Alchemy, but my name is Sharita Marshall, and I am founder and lead consultant for Visionary Development Consulting, where I go into corporations to help them create psychologically safe workplaces that are impactful and capitalism adjacent. So, what does that mean? That means that all the work that you do showing up as authentically as you feel psychologically safe to do, I want to make sure that that impact is highlighted. I want to showcase that having diverse individuals with diverse lived experiences, diverse education, diverse backgrounds, diverse abilities are highlighted, showcased, and it's known that they are how corporations operate. And I've also developed certifications for employee resource groups, and those are groups that for traditional corporations are around identity based. So they could be your Latina, Latino, Latinx, or your Pride, or your Black, or your Asians, Pacific American, things like that. So that those individuals don't feel isolated or marginalized within an organization. I've also developed career or professional development programming for those individuals as well, because as we know, when we go into spaces that do not celebrate us, a lot of times we are gaslit to within the inch of our life. And I do not believe that people need to be traumatized to pay bills. So that is the foundation of my work, is to minimize the least amount of trauma for you in order for you to live in this capitalist society.
Okay. You said something. People do not feel as though people need to be traumatized to pay their bills. Okay, I felt that one. Obviously, I do my homework. I study who I bring up to interview, and I see that you're a multifaceted professional. So, my first question: what do you enjoy doing the most? Out of all the hats you wear, what do you enjoy doing the most, and why?
What I enjoy doing the most is giving people permission for their own self liberation.
Mm,
Because a lot of times, the way that we show up in our professional life, especially, is we're coming from a traumatized lens where our upbringing and our experiences have reduced us to shrink or contort ourselves to be palatable in spaces that do not want us to exist. And what I love to do is to be able to show you that you have the right, the permission, and the responsibility to liberate yourself from that environment as well as that mindset.
mhm. I have a couple sentences and some phrases that I just want to share with you, and then you can just share with us what comes to mind. Okay, um,
Mm-hmm.
thriving in the workplace. What comes to mind first for you? To thrive in the workplace.
To not be gaslit so much that you think that you're the problem.
Mm,
Because when you look at the situation and when you go from either different positions to different companies, you see the common denominator as yourself. And
right.
it's not. The common denominator is actually systemic inequities. But we've been so indoctrinated to believe that that's not real and that merit is the only thing that counts. But we have allowed people who have been in oppressive positions to dictate what merit actually means. Merit does not mean the same thing for everyone. Everyone doesn't have the same resources. Everyone doesn't have the same opportunities. Everyone doesn't have the same background. So to blankly say that it is based off of merit alone when we know that there are systemic inequities that keep certain individuals out of spaces
Hmm.
is just gaslighting people to thinking that they're the problem and not actually addressing the systemic inequities that are keeping people in bondage to think that they constantly have to prove that they belong in a space or they should exist in that space.
Right. Thank you. I love that perspective. Staying on the topic of being in the workplace, you recently did a video on imposter syndrome, and I recently discussed that about two videos ago and interviews ago. I just want to continue that conversation. What would you say is best to addressing and overcoming imposter syndrome as it relates to the workplace?
I actually had an article that I was interviewed about that. So if you want to see the article, just go to my link tree or DM me. I have it available. It's also available on my LinkedIn profile. The thing that I want people to understand is that imposter syndrome is not real for people of color,
Okay.
particularly black people. It is not a real thing. And the reason why I'm saying it's not a real thing is because, one, it does not address the systemic inequities. And I'm going to keep coming back to that.
Hmm.
Systemic inequities have taught us that, again, it's our ability to exist is the problem. Us is the problem. It does not address the fact that when we go into spaces that we are not celebrated in, we are barely tolerated in, and do not want us, we constantly rethink everything that we do. We constantly say, oh, well, I have to prove I belong here, or I have to show up as a perfect person, or if anything goes wrong, I don't represent just myself, I represent the collective that is me, that is my identity. So when it comes to imposter syndrome, and I especially talk about this for black women, We are the most highly educated within this country. And
Okay.
for us to not have the opportunity and for us to constantly be questioned whether or not we belong in spaces is not even mind blowing to me. I know it is an aspect of racism, sexism, misogynoir, and all the things. So when it comes to imposter syndrome, one, I always want people to stop and give themselves grace for existing in spaces that do not want them there. And then on top of that, I want them to acknowledge that the majority of the time, and sometimes it could be us.
Hmm.
I acknowledge that, but the majority of the time, 99% of the time, it is a system that is set up to look at us as less than because the default is always going to be whiteness, especially male whiteness. They say
Hmm.
by default, that is the one that is qualified, that is the one that should be doing. Everything else has to prove. And when you understand and look at it from that lens, you understand that your imposter syndrome is not real, it's just a conditioning.
That conditioning. I love that perspective once again. Um, Another question. First step in creating liberation in his life. I saw that. Thank you for the heartbeat. I saw that on your page, and I love that. And I want you just to come and share that with us over here. What would you say is the first step in creating liberation in one's life?
Is giving yourself permission to be liberated. Like
Mm.
that has to be your beginning step. You can't do anything else unless you give yourself permission to do it. A lot of times we have external factors which are key in a lot of the decisions and the nuances and the way that we exist in the world.
Mhm.
But if we don't give ourselves permission to push back, to question, to not go gently into that good night, nothing else we do will make an impact. So you have to give yourself permission for your own liberation.
Right. I love that. Um, I'm staying on the topic of this, empowerment and the work culture. So, toxic corporate culture and corporate PTSD. I just want to briefly touch on that. We have a couple questions that I want to go, and we're going to pivot on questions back and forth. But I just wanted to make sure I highlighted all the things that stuck out to me from your content and all of the great information that you were sharing. So, what would you say is an example of a toxic corporate culture?
There's so many.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
so many. So like let me go back and not traumatize myself and
Yeah,
thinking about it.
I love how
Um
you laid them
but
out on your page too to give examples. So I just want you to see, just drop one or two over
yeah.
here, office hours.
So one of which is one, you taking on the mental of everyone's social and emotional well-being. That's
Mm,
a toxic work environment. If a corporation says we're a family, that's toxic. If you're in an environment where you're constantly being overlooked and undervalued, that is toxic.
okay.
If you are in a situation where you cannot be yourself for fear of whatever, dot, dot,
Hmm.
dot, that is a toxic work environment.
Okay, that's good. Do y'all hear that? Do you guys hear those examples? And if you guys want more examples, she has them all laid out on her page, and she has resources on her page as well too. Continuing the conversation, I love your take on human design. So, could you break it down for us? What is human design? And you could have it as it relates to either starting a business or pivoting into a new career. What is human design?
I liken human design to be your native essence, who
Mm-hmm.
you are
Mm-hmm.
as a human,
Okay.
all the multifaceted parts of you outside of social economic identities. It's how you were brought forth into the world and how you should operate as this being. So when you think about your human design, you fall into categories, and these categories are based off of your birth date, the time, the place, and the year. And when you look at who you are, so for me, I'm a generator. And what that means is that I have all of these creative ideas and I can go, 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 and I can go sometimes without stopping. But there is a caveat to that. If I don't control or put a boundary around it, I'll run myself thin. I mean, I'll run myself ragged and thin. But when you tap into who you are natively outside of any definition that is external to you, you begin to make decisions based off of who you are,
Okay.
not the commodity that you produce.
Mm,
And that's one of the key differentiators between how you choose to show up in the world and
mm.
who dictates how you show up in the world.
I love that. Staying on the topic of human design, we also discussed emotional authority. Could you just tap a little bit into that for us?
So your emotional authority is just how you operate with your emotions, how you make decisions. So for me, my emotional authority comes from my gut. So
Mm,
immediately my gut is like hell yes or absolutely not.
right.
And I know that might seem extreme, but because of my makeup, I know that when I actually tune into that, that
Mm-hmm.
it is never wrong. If it is telling me absolutely not, no matter what the circumstances is, I know that I should not do that. And it's not just because of right now I shouldn't do it, but because if I make this decision, then there could be ramifications in the long run that are not in my best interest. So I should not do that. So when it comes to your emotional authority, if you are someone who rides emotions all the time, you should not make decisions when you're either emotionally high or emotionally low. You have to get to a neutral level to make a decision, because if you do it from either place, it can negatively impact you. So it's one, being able to make the decisions from those places, but then two, it's also training yourself to listen to your emotions but not have them lead you in the decision making process.
Right. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I want to pivot over into your book. Okay. The unwritten rules are meant to be broken. Breaking barriers, thriving in corporate spaces, redefining success as a Black leader. Who was your target audience for this book?
My target audience is Black leaders in corporate America. The
Mhm.
book is actually based off of my professional development program that I created for a multinational company.
Mhm.
This is actually a French company. And so they have offices here in the US, and most of their Black employees are lower junior level employees, and
Okay.
they want more of them to be in more of the director and senior level positions, but
Hmm.
they don't want to just push them in it. They want to make sure they're prepared and to handle what that looks like. So when they came to me and said, hey, we want to make sure that our team members are prepared, and we also want to address that there are unwritten rules that we know that they have to listen to or that they need to acknowledge. What does that look like? How can we set them up for success? So when I created the professional development program, I was like, you know what, I want this to be available for more people outside of my clientele. So that's
Right.
what I created the book on. And the book really was me taking a lot of my personal experiences as well as other Black leaders to put the story, spin, and narrative all onto the program that essentially is the book. And I talk about disavowing imposter syndrome. I talk
Mhm.
about how to lead diverse teams. I talk about personal branding. I talk about the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. I talk about self advocacy and what that looks like, all from framing it of you need to decide what success looks like for you, and you get to create the pathway to that, because we've been told you have to get these degrees and then you have to play this game and you have to do all these things. And I want to remind people that the game was never set up for our success. The game was always set up for to be a barrier for us to be, do, and have. So it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to contort yourself to be palatable in spaces that don't want you, or if you choose to show up as your authentic self in a way that feels good to you and is as least traumatic as possible. What does that look like? And
Right.
are you willing to pay the price or the cost of existing in a world like that? Because a lot of times we don't look at the cost that we're paying when we play small, or the cost that we're paying when we just accept less than, whether it's not getting a merit increase, not negotiating a salary, not going after a position because we don't check all the boxes.
Right.
And so when I talk about the price, one of the videos I talk about, I don't know if you have that in there, is that I talk about how I calculated my lost wages over my career, and it added up to $1.4 million. And that
Wow.
was due to underemployment, unemployment, not getting the promotions I had, leaving because I was stressed out and had anxiety. So I went on FMLA, and not negotiating for what I knew was closer to my value than what I accepted.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Do y'all see why she is up here? Once again, do y'all see why she is up here? I found her. I came across your page. I enjoyed your content, and I saw that your content needed There are certain content that I feel as though needs to be discussed, and it can be no matter what genre you're in, no matter what niche you're in. Do you guys see why she is up here? I want to continue the conversation. Let's bring it back a couple of years because I have a lot of engagers and supporters who are thinking about going back to school, college. How was your overall college experience?
Well, my undergrad, I went to the Howard University,
Hmm.
HBCU. I
All right.
loved it. If I could have skipped high school and went straight to Howard, I would have. I swear I should have figured out how to do that. Being at Howard was the most phenomenal experience I ever had. And I'm from Detroit, so I came from a black city. So it wasn't like I was going, to be around other black people, but
Hmm.
it's the Mecca. It was being able to see our history. It was being able to see the books that I read and knew that the authors came from there. It was being able to see the authors come back. It was, like Toni Morrison. It was being able to see Al Freeman, Morgan Freeman's brother, who was in the fine arts department. It was
Right.
being able to see all of these people I've seen on TV, on Broadway, in the books, that they're there, and I had access to them, and being around professors that were emotionally invested in my success. That was just the most amazing experience. And I'm a big proponent of HBCUs. I don't care what this regime/administration is doing.
Okay.
I
I'm
still
agree.
want people, if you want to go to college, especially
Mhm.
the first time, I strongly suggest you go to HBCU. There is no experience like it. And I think every black person in America should go to HBCU. That was the best thing. For my master's, I went to PWI in Arizona. It was fine. I got it. I got my master's, whatever. But but
I
having
hear
that,
the difference. I hear the difference.
yeah, so I'm like, I just needed to get an MBA, and I was here, so that happened. But to have that experience at Howard, and I have friends that I still have to this day from being there. It was just one of the best experiences of my life, and I highly recommend it. What I recommend for people right now, if they're thinking about going back to school, I always say, what are you going back for?
Right.
And it's not, and I say that not because I'm like, I don't believe in higher education. I do, but I want to make sure that we're not just trying to go back because we're trying to prove like we have the experience, we have the education. We're just trying to keep going in that hamster wheel of approval. If you are looking to say, hey, I want to become a licensed therapist, or I want to be a doctor now, or I want to do something that requires that set of education, then I'm all for it. Or if you're like, hey, I want to have a PhD because I want to be a professor or do something like that, or I want to do certain research, and getting this advanced degree is what's going to get me there, then I'm all for it. But if you're going back just to go back because you want to be in tech, no. Like, get a certification. Like, don't just do it just to do it. Do it because you have a purpose that's directly tied to you needing to have that advanced or that specific level of education.
Right, I love that. Staying on the topic of college, I often tell my supporters over here on this end, do not be afraid to change your major. There is this notion that, oh, don't change your major, don't stick it out all the way through. I'm an advocate for change your major. That's what the whole college experience is about. What would you say to those who start a major and thinking about changing it, unsure, or being told, do not change your major, stick it all the way through? Because I've changed my major about 3 times and and I was still successful. What's your take on that?
I always tell people, no matter what decision you have, especially when their life could be life altering decisions, what is the ultimate outcome of this that you want? So if you decide that, you know what, I thought that I was passionate, I thought I wanted to be a doctor when I originally went into school, and then I realized I can't deal with people dying on me. So it's like, I can't be a doctor because if my patients die for whatever
Right,
reason, I'm gonna be emotionally invested, and then it's not gonna
right,
work.
right.
But it's like, what are you going to this particular major because you want to solve a problem within it? So are you looking at, biology because you want to look at disease prevention, or are you looking at finance because you want to help underserved banked communities? Like,
Hmm.
what is the ultimate outcome of the education that you're looking to get? And when you come at it from that standpoint, because I remember like a long time ago, they were like, well, just look at what problem you're trying to solve. And I'm like, well, Yeah, but then you're making them hyper focus on the problem versus what is the ultimate outcome. Because I
Right.
can say I want to solve the problem of people not having cancer, but the outcome that I really want is that I want to be able to prevent people from getting cancer. I want to be able for us to have a disease free lifestyle. What does that look like? How can I help create that? So I always come from the standpoint of what is the ultimate outcome that you're looking to get from deciding to go into this major.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that perspective. I'm switching gears again. Education, being an educator. What do you enjoy the most about being an educator, and what subjects do you enjoy teaching?
I love being able to point people in the direction not only of their self liberation, but for their
Mhm.
own critical thinking. That's something that we lack a lot of within the United States is the ability to think critically. And
Right.
right now they're blaming it on AI. And I'm like,
Okay.
yeah, but if that's the tool that they're given, that's the tool that they're given. What we're not teaching people is to how to critically think about things, how to question things. We just
Right.
automatically accept things for what they are, and that's just not how I was raised. I was raised to read a book, an actual physical book. I was raised to ask questions from multiple sources to see
Right.
like what is the ultimate answer. So for me, teaching allows me to show people how to exercise the muscle of critical thinking, because I feel like once you have that muscle, it doesn't matter what the subject is, you'll be
Right.
able to understand it once you're able to understand how to critically think about it.
Right. Perfect. I love that. Um, we're gonna get a little bit controversial, and we answer these questions. Healthy. This is I like to call it healthy conversation. Okay. How has the current political climate affected the work that you do overall? Let's start there.
Well, it's pushed people to finally catch up to what I've been trying to tell people over the past 3 years. That's the
Repeat,
first thing.
repeat that. Repeat that again. Repeat it again.
It's finally pushed people to catch up to what I've been saying over the past 3 years.
Okay.
When I was doing the work that I'm doing now as a consulting business, I was doing it for a tech company and I was a
Hmm.
global ERG leader. And I
Hmm.
saw that when there was no processes, there were no documentation, there was no buy in from leadership, there was no connection to the overall business. And I was like, well, how can anybody support us or know what we're doing if we can't show impact? And so that's what I've been preaching and teaching about over the past 3 years. And people have been like, oh, okay, okay. And now they're like, oh, okay, well, if we don't do that, then we're probably not going to get the support we need. Yeah, because we live in a capitalist society. So you have to show an ROI or a return on investment.
Right.
So you have to show that. So that's what's pushed the discussions to be more urgent and less, proactive and more reactive at this point. And then also, it's pushed a lot of people that I know that are very talented, very committed out
Hmm.
of the industry because
Hmm.
they're just like, my position has been either furloughed or dismissed, or I'm not listened to, or they play in my face. So it's a
Hmm.
lot of trauma on the side as well.
Hmm.
It took me some time to think about whether I wanted to continue down this path or not,
Right.
because I was like, if everybody just gave up, like I'm not going to keep beating my head against the wall. But I had enough people that are like, hey, we still want to do this. We just don't know how to do it in a way that we won't get in trouble for. Come to me, and then I was like, okay, well, there seems to be people that still want to do this, and then my clientele is global, so there are people outside of the country that are like, we don't care what y'all doing, we still need this over here.
Right.
So there still is a need, a desire, and a want for the work that I do. I'm just teaching people to reframe how they're doing the work to show impact versus just accepting that they have to just show it in one way. Like there's so many different ways to show impact, and I'm just teaching them how to do that. So that's what's shifted for me within what's happening with this place.
Perfect. I love that. Switching gears again, because we're just going to continue switching gears because we have so much to discuss. Okay. May
Mm-hmm.
is Mental Health Awareness Month. Okay. The work that you do, it can be taxing overall. Any industry, the work that we do, it can be taxing on our bodies, on our physical, on our mental overall. What are some of the best practices that you do that you could share with us to stay on top of your mental health overall?
I'm a big advocate for therapy,
Okay.
having a therapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist based off of
Hmm.
your needs. Super big advocate for that. And I'm
Hmm.
also a big advocate for reminding people that everything is not personal, even though it is.
Okay.
So sometimes you just got to recognize and be like, yeah, this is just what they're going to do. And so
Right.
you can't internalize it. So just reminding yourself not to internalize everything, even though it does feel like it's personal. A lot of times it is personal, but it's a system that is set up against you as a collective and not an individual. So just having that reminder, and then, you know, taking time to decompress, to walk, to hug a tree. I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you have a lot of, not even negative energy, but if you have a lot of just things within you, some type of turmoil, anything, hug a tree. I know it sounds hippie, but when you hug a tree, you're actually grounding yourself and you're allowing the tree to absorb your energy. If you ever research nature, you understand that trees are collective, even though they can be miles away. They have a system of their roots that connect, and they can talk to each other, just like mushrooms do. So when you take that time to dispel energy, it does take that energy from you and it puts it down into the ground, and it can dissipate or it can use it as energy or fuel for growing. So just like it takes CO2 and turns it into oxygen, it can take all of that energy as well. So if you just honestly just wrap your arms around a tree and just give it a moment, you find that you're a little bit more centered than you were when you started. So I always recommend that, and people look at me weird or laugh, but I promise it works.
Right. I love that. I love that perspective. Staying on the topic of best practices for mental health, you recently did a video, importance of giving ourselves flowers, celebrating our small wins and giving us our kudos. Can you just highlight that a little bit more? The importance of giving ourselves flowers.
Yes. So many times we are conditioned to just produce, 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 produce.
Right.
And I liken that to a residual effect of chattel slavery that says that if you are not producing something that empowers or creates economic opportunity for someone else, you have no value. So for me, I'm like, I need to, one, acknowledge the value of just my mere existence. If I don't do anything else in this world, because I exist, I have value. But then all the things that I do, I have to take a moment to remind myself that that was great, that was good. A part of the work that I do with professional development is telling people to do a journal. And every week you write down your wins, big or small, personal or professional, so that you remind yourself that you have an inherent value, that you have created things, you have done things, you have accomplished stuff. And it can be like you were able to rest, you were able to take a nap, you were able to do your hair, just whatever it is. Because once you start to do that self internalized valuation, then you don't rely so heavily on external valuation and validation, and you don't need it. And you can see that when you are in spaces that you don't feel valued, you're less likely to accept that as your reality moving forward. So that's one of the biggest things I tell people to do, is just take the time. If it's 20 minutes, 15 minutes at the end of the week, just sit down with yourself and just write down everything you did and just look at it as a win, no matter how big or how small.
Perfect. I love that. Staying on the topic of journaling, you have a journal. When I was your age, a mother to daughter journal. Can you share with us what is that?
Yes, so I lost my mother in this physical realm to cancer in 2017. And one of the biggest lessons I learned from that was that I didn't know who she was as a woman. I knew her a little bit as a woman, but mostly as my mom. And I wish I had time to understand who she was as a woman, her experiences outside of being just my mom. So I know that a lot of my friends and my family members have that same experience where they don't know their mother outside of just being their mother. And a lot of times it's like on their deathbed or when they're 90, they find these things out. And I wanted to create a journal where it's just prompts that you just sit down and you just write different things that happen in your life from different periods of your life, from your youth, from your teenage years, your adult years, just kind of like lessons learned, experiences that you can share with your loved one. And it doesn't have to be, your biological daughter. If you're an auntie, if you're a godmother, any like that, any woman or motherly figure can share who they are as that woman or motherly figure, and I'm not talking about biological, I'm just talking about that existence, how you show up, just sharing your experience, so that that person and those individuals can see who you are as a human being outside of a label that you've been given.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Before I wrap up to our last question, which I'm sure you know what it is, there was somebody in the chat asking, do you have an Instagram? Is there any other social media platforms that you have aside from TikTok?
Yes, I have an Instagram with my name, Shrita Marshall. I'm not on it as much, but I do have an Instagram. But you are more likely to catch me here on TikTok or on LinkedIn. Those are my heavy hitters.
Okay, perfect. So before we wrap things up, I would love for you to share with us what is your overall why? Your why as it relates to the work that you do, your why as it relates to your activism, your why as it relates to you being an educator, your why as it relates to you being a Black woman working in the current climate that we are in right now. What is her divine alchemy's overall why?
I do not want people to be traumatized to pay bills.
Hmm.
That is my why.
Let me write that. Hold on.
Because we live in a capitalist society, and I do not want us to continuously be traumatized to pay bills. I wish we could live in a society where money didn't matter. I wish we could live in a society where everything was great and equitable, blah, 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 but we don't.
Right.
But if we're going to have to exist in this madhouse of madness, then the least we can do is find the least traumatic way to exist in our fullest authenticity.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, your background, your niche. This is what Office Hours is all about, connecting with others who are doing great work. Like I said, great work within their community, great work within their spaces. So thank you so much for taking the time to step over in Office Hours with Dr. Johnson and letting us know who is Divine Alchemy and what she does. So once again, you said you do have an Instagram, you do have a LinkedIn, but you are mainly here on TikTok.
Yes. If you want to find me anywhere else, then you just find me by my name, Sharita Marshall.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, and you continue to have a great day. Okay.
Okay, you too. Thank you so much.
Let me disconnect. Let me disconnect you so you can keep your points. I learned that. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We'll talk
Thank
soon.
you. Okay.
So once again, just to go over that great interview, her divine alchemy. We learned about her educational professional background. We learned about her being a multifaceted professional and what she enjoys the most. I told you guys, the interviewees that I bring up, I do my homework. I have a series of questions. We went over what thriving in the workplace looks like and what comes to mind when she hears what is thriving in the workplace. We discussed overcoming and addressing imposter syndrome. We discussed her overall college experience at an HBCU. We discussed first steps in creating liberation in one's life. Her being an educator, her being an activist, her journals that she's wrote, and the books that she's wrote. She's a superwoman. Once again, do you all see why I brought her over here? Do you all see why I wanted to highlight the work that she does? All of you on here still here. Thank you for stepping into Office Hours with Dr. Johnson. This was I like today and tomorrow's interviews are straight to the point. Great questions, great people. I just wanted you to come in here, receive these gems, connect with others, and come be a part of Office Hours with Dr. Johnson overall. I'm gonna head on out now. But before that,